In this video, let's go over sealing pavers yourself. This is something that's asked quite often. It's even asked to us when we come out to do the estimate at times, like, why shouldn't I do this myself? And so I want to do a quick video just educating you on some things that you should consider before you seal the pavers yourself, especially if you live in the Florida area. Living in Florida is totally different than anywhere else when it comes to sealing pavers. For example, when I retired from the military, my wife and I considered strongly to move to Virginia, where she's from. And in Virginia, our approach to sealing pavers would have been completely different than the approach here in Florida, mainly because of the weather. And that's the part that a lot of people just don't understand. So let's go over some of the things that you should consider if you're going to take on this project yourself. Number one, do you know how to properly address the stains? It's very common to have rust stains, oil stains, grease stains, and so you need to know how to approach and clean up those stains if they'll even come out. But more importantly, to treat those stains is not just pressure and water. Those type of stains are inorganic stains or man-made stains, and so those take usually like degreasers, or they take an acid, and so you need to properly know how to neutralize those chemicals that you're using, so later on when it's time to seal, you don't have an adverse reaction or a chemical burn because earlier in the steps you were treating a stain and didn't properly neutralize it. Another thing you need to know is the proper sand. Believe it or not, sand is very, very critical in all of this. The sand, what goes on in between the pavers and what goes on underneath the pavers, is very, very important. I cannot foot stomp that enough. And you need to know what types of sand to use if you're going to seal your pavers. And believe it or not, if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's or any of these big box stores here in Florida, they're all going to try to sell you play sand or paver sand. And it's kind of an oxymoron because that's actually the opposite of what you want to use here in this area. Again, what you might be able to get away with in places like New Jersey, Virginia, Colorado, you cannot get away with down here in Florida. And I'm not saying this to try to scare anyone or try to deceive you or make you think you can't do it yourself, but it's just a shocker when people try to do it themselves and the sealer has failed and now they're paying $4,000 or $5,000 to fix it when you could have had it cleaned and sealed for $1,000, maybe even less, but now you're paying four or five times the cost to have it fixed. Another thing is you want to use a water-based sealer. This is, again, very important given the environment that we live in. You want to have something that's breathable, that when you're exposed to the high levels of rain and humidity, if you've ever seen a pool deck or a driveway that's covered in white, a lot of times that's the sealer has failed, and what's going on, the reason it's got like this white haze everywhere, it's either the cause of three things. Efflorescence, which is very easy to treat and to diagnose, or failed sealer, or polyhaze from polysand. So if you have any of those issues, especially like a real bad polyhaze or trapped moisture from sealer that's failing, the only way you can rectify that is you have to have that old sealer taken off. And that can be, again, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to fix a job that would have been just maybe $1,000 to clean and seal. So it's very important to use the right type of sealer. What we use a water-based sealer, a particular type of water-based sealer. Our sealer is guaranteed not to trap moisture. It's guaranteed not to turn yellow. It's guaranteed not to delaminate. If any of those things happen, we have a warranty to protect you, the homeowner, against those things. But if you're just trying to do it yourself, you're going to have a very difficult time finding a proper water-based sealer down here in Florida. Because at these big box stores such as Ace, Home Depot, Lowe's, they sell what the rest of the world buys, which is solvents or oil-based. And that's what we would have used living up in Virginia. But again, down here in Florida, you have to use a water-based type sealer or I don't want to say you have to, but that's what is strongly recommended. And the problem for DIY people that want to do it themselves, it's very, very difficult to find a water-based sealer. And if they can usually only find like a 1-part water-based that's just not near as good as a good solid 2-part water-based sealer. And then, do you know the proper sand levels? And I know we discussed a little bit about the types of sand. You got to use a filtered sand, but the sand levels are also important. You don't want the sand too high, and you certainly don't want it too low. And there's a specific level, preferably 1/4 to 1/8 below the beveled edge is where you want those sand levels, and that helps with the interlocking functions of the pavers and also with the draining of the pavers. So all of these things are very important for you to know and to be able to apply so that you don't find yourself in trouble. The last thing I want to touch on, again, down here in Florida, is we prefer not to roll sealer on. Again, a rolled look is uneven. You can see the roll marks. So we spray our sealer, and that's the preferred way on water-based. Solvents and those kind of things, that's more common up north. That's where they roll, and that's where you may see people doing it down here. That's bad juju down here. For every one that you find has no problems, I can show you 99 that do have problems. So if you're going to do it yourself, just be careful. You need to understand the type of sealer you use is very important. The type of sand you use is very important. And also when you're treating stains, you need to know how to properly neutralize afterwards, or if you don't, you're going to cause a chemical reaction later on when you go to apply the sealer. So I hope that helps. Again, I'm not ever saying that you shouldn't do it yourself, but there are certainly some factors you need to be aware of if you're going to take that type of project on yourself.